Alright, Flashmasters, let's get started. As always, you start off in the Google Classroom. That's where you're going to find your assignment for each day. For Monday, 3:30, Lesson 9. Here are the slides. Let's get into them. So, Week 3, Day 1, Lesson 9. Follow the steps in the slides. Just wanted to let you know this week we will be resuming working on the APCSP Explore task. We're going to be submitting that this week for a couple of the sections. We'll be explaining more about how that works tomorrow. Here are the office hours for today, 10:30 to 11 and 1:14 to 1:44. Ms. Lugo and myself will be going over what's going on in Code Combat and in Blackbeard's Bootcamp. If you are having any problems at all, make sure you are in those sessions. Finally, we get to where you choose your course materials. If you're in Blackbeard's Bootcamp, you're going to be clicking this video right here that will link to the Ed Puzzle. You're always going to do that first. And if you really want, you can follow with the Lesson 9 slides that we're about to jump into right now. All right, Blackbeard's Bootcamp, Lesson 9. This week, we will continue with the APCSP Explore task. We will begin the APCSP Create task in just a month. That means the goal of Blackbeard's Bootcamp is to teach you how to better read and write code. But we've been over this. Before you write, you got to think, and writing requires one prerequisite, that is the ability to read. You can't write unless you read, and in order to read, you need the ability to abstract. This week, our goals are that students will be able to read simple functions, calculate the output of functions with various input, and write simple functions that require arguments. Abstraction. The goal of abstracting data is to reduce complexity by removing unnecessary information / details. Also something we've seen before. When you abstract, you should speak as though the person does not know what you mean or what you're talking about, and only give the details that are relevant for understanding. By the end of this session, this class right here, we're going to know exactly what this code does and how to read it. What will print when the code is run. So we can actually look at this code in two sections. There's the for loop and then the not for loop. Let's take a look at the for loop. When we look at these sections, we're going to break them down into essential knowledge, common misconceptions, how to read, and output. So for that for loop, the for was a key word as well as X is a for loop index variable. Both of those can be looked up in W3 schools. If you come and you look, they give you exactly what the for loop is and the syntax and some examples for how to use them. If you look at N, that's another keyword. N actually has two purposes. We're using it in order to iterate through a sequence in a for loop. Finally, there's range that goes to W3 schools. I left you a link so you can look that up yourself. And just to check to see if you know and you did the work, here's a question for you. For a range of 3, 6, what numbers will be included in the range? So some common misconceptions. The last number in the range is not included. What that means is that for range x, y, the result will be a range that starts at x, then increments by 1 until it reaches y minus 1. So a range of 3 to 6 would mean that the numbers are 3 to 5. Using the x and y in range xy is an example of which of the 5 principles of computational thinking. Now when we're looking at that for loop, this starts at an index of 1 and increases by 1 until it equals 2. The output is just going to be 1, then 2. Now before we go to the not for loop, let's look inside the for loop. There is a print function that just says print x. Now, we've seen the print function plenty of times, so I just want to make sure you understand it. What will the output be for print 3 times 3? Next, what will the output be for print in parentheses 3 times 3? Wink, wink. So a common misconception is that if it is in the quotation marks, it is a literal. So a string literal just means it prints whatever is inside of those quotation marks. Otherwise, you will calculate what you see in there. So you'll read this by saying to print the value of x during that loop iteration. Remember, the output is 1 and then 2 according to the values of the range, which are represented by x. All right, let's look at the second part of the code, which is that print 5 plus 2 times 3. So the not for loop, print 5 plus 2 times 3, we've looked at the print command already, so now it's just a matter of making sure we understand how to calculate what's inside of it. So in order to calculate this output, you need to understand PEMDAS. That is the essential knowledge you need to bring in for this section of the code. And of course, everyone remembers PEMDAS, right? One common misconception with PEMDAS is the fact that no matter the order the equation is in, multiplication comes before addition, assuming that it's not in parentheses first. So you read this as 5 plus 2 times 3 because that 2 times 3 is together and it does come before you add the 5. That's going to be 2 times 3 equals 6 plus 5 gives you 11. And finally, when we read them all together, for x in range of 1 to 3, print x, then print 5 plus 2 times 3. We saw before that the output for the range function, or I should say for the for loop, is 1, then 2. And finally, we print 11, which gives us an output of 1, 2, and 11. Here's an example with that code in there for x in range of 1 to 3, print x. So there we go, 1, 2, and 11. If you look to the right, you'll see your assignment today, or your coding challenge for today, 3:30. First, you're going to write a for loop that prints from 1 to 9. Then you're going to print y equals mx plus b. And then you're going to write a comment on the final line that explains what the output will be. That is also here inside of the slide. If you have any questions, remember, you can always log in during Zoom calls. So, when you're submitting your work, you'll be submitting your link to your code as well as completing the ed puzzle. Corona Wars is on hiatus this week, but we will be back. Don't worry about that. And for the final daily participation challenge, you're just going to complete the spring design competition survey. I want to see how you feel about it, for better or for worse. That is all, my friends. Make sure that you are reaching out if you need help. Plus Ultra.